No, because I'm criticizing someone who's responsible for the mass slaughter of innocents.
You're
I'm an
assuming.
anti-Semite.
The one way
that you're an anti-Semite for criticizing someone who's carrying out mass slaughter.
Yeah, I think the whole honestly, Jenna, the whole shtick of accusing.
I'm not assuming. I'm just
hang on.
Guys, MAGA pundits have become so shameless that they're now defending anything and everything for their beloved leader, Donald Trump. These pundits do not give a damn about the American public. They don't care how badly Trump's policies are affecting the ordinary, working-class American citizens. They just want to defend Trump no matter what. This week, on the Piers Morgan show, MAGA pundits were absolutely annihilated. They were fact-checked so hard by Anna that they were cornered into complete silence. Now, I'm going to play some clips from the show. I'll give my opinion as we go.
The U.S. Defense Secretary, or he's the Secretary of War now, Pete Hegseth, told the Senate on Tuesday that the U.S.-Israel war in Iran so far cost $37.5 billion. That's from February 28th to July 22nd. Now, per day, that is $260.4 million a day. Per hour, $10.8 million per hour. Per minute, $180,000 per minute and $3,000 per second. So even as I say the words, Caroline Sunshine, what is your reaction to that? I've probably incurred another $10,000 in American public costs for a war that the American public do not want to be happening. They didn't to start with. They definitely don't now. I still am scratching my head about how a president who, in his campaign to be re-elected, said that he didn't want to get involved in any more pointless Middle Eastern wars. He wanted America first, get the cost of living down and so on. How does any of this make sense?
Yeah, it doesn't. And my first reaction is that's a lot of money just to close the Strait of Hormuz and enter into what is now, according to recent polling from The Economist, America's most unpopular war in our history. That's including Vietnam. So what's interesting is if you look at the president's Truth Social post from yesterday, he too also has an awareness of how unpopular this war is. He sent out a tweet on Truth Social that I found to be insensitive, if I'm honest. I have a pretty high tolerance for what the president posts on Truth Social. I don't consider myself to be a snowflake. 99% that's on there, good with me. But this one listed out, America's wars, everything from the Korean War up into this current war. And it listed out the death totals of how many soldiers we lost in each conflict. And then it didn't call the Iran war the Iran war. It called the Iran war the Iranian military conflict.
But you know why they do that?
Which is interesting.
You know why they do that? They do it because at the moment they call it a war, they have to get congressional approval. And in fact, to be fair to Trump on this particular point, no American president since World War II has called any military action a war for that reason. So Obama didn't, no one does, right? Clinton didn't. They don't do it because that way they can avoid having to seek prior congressional approval.
Yes, and I also think it has to do with the president understanding where public sentiment is. If this was a war that we were winning, if this was a war that was popular, I think the president would be happy to be the wartime president. He's the producer in chief. He sees himself as the star in a movie. He would be happy to be that. But even he has an awareness that this has gone on a lot longer than the 4 to 6 weeks we were promised.
Actually, Jenna Ellis, it was 2 to 3 weeks. Then it was 4 to 6 weeks. Then it was 2 months. It's all been completely different to how it was sold to the American people and indeed to the world. Pete Hegseth argued that the Pentagon was now running low on cash to keep this war going. And he's asked the Senate Appropriations Committee for nearly $67 billion more to continue the effort. Let's take a look at a clip.
Mr. Hegseth, you're requesting roughly $68 billion for the department through this supplemental, correct?
67, yes.
You said on day 14, Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Yes or no? Was that an accurate statement?
What the American military has done to the Iranian military is a historic military defeat, and they're ineffective in that context.
I mean, they tangle themselves up in this because of all the false promises and pledges that simply haven't been met by reality and continue to be not met by reality. But honestly, Jenna, this idea that the American people, after 4 months of this war that's supposed to last us a couple of weeks, may be in the hook for, $100 billion at a time when gas prices have never been higher. I'm going to California at the end of this week. And, I'm told that gas prices are like twice as much as last time I was there in October. How does any of this make sense? Yeah. And politically, it's so damaging for the Republican chances in the midterm, surely.
I'm going to stop here for a bit. Guys, at this point, it is pretty clear that Trump is losing the war against Iran. He attacked Iran with the mindset that he could defeat them within a week and change their regime, but it turns out that Iran is a much tougher enemy than Iraq or Afghanistan or even Venezuela. Guys, Trump is probably the dumbest president this country has ever had. I mean, he should have never listened to Rubio, Bibi, and that Fox News host Pete Hegseth, that the Iranian people would rise against their government as soon as we start attacks, or that we would be greeted as liberators, or the regime would collapse after the Ayatollah killing. I mean, it looks like Trump got cocky after the Venezuela intervention success and thought another success in Iran would cement his legacy. Plus, the optics of the Iranian people greeting President Trump as their liberator stoked his ego. Guys, this war should have never happened in the first place because Iran is a very complex country to deal with. Aerial attacks alone can change nothing on the ground. Even if you kill their supreme leader, as Trump did with the Ayatollah, that means nothing to the IRGC because they can find a replacement within 24 hours. The only way to change the Iranian regime is through ground invasion. But again, that won't be easy because of Iran's complex geography. Guys, Iraq and Afghanistan had populations of around 26 million when they were invaded. Iran has a population of more than 90 million. They've also been training and stockpiling rockets, missiles, drones, and have a far more professional army compared to Iraq or Afghanistan. So, I mean, defeating the Iranian military and changing their regime is next to impossible. And that's the reason no other president in the U.S. history has ever started a war with them. Obama chose the diplomatic route with them because he knew that Iran would weaponize the Strait of Hormuz and block the flow of oil, which would become a nightmare for the entire world. But Trump didn't strategize shit. He went to war with no clear objectives, and now he's stuck in deep shit.
Well, you can blame Gavin Newsom for that. I live in Florida where our gas prices are actually okay, thanks to Governor DeSantis. But I would much rather the Senate appropriate money to go to keeping Iran away from nuclear capabilities than funding Arab Sesame Street. I mean, this is exactly why Doge was so deeply popular when Trump first retook office. Hold on, let me finish.
That's a bold claim. What evidence do you have of that?
Let me
What evidence do you have?
I would rather
has
have
nuclear capabilities that they're pursuing. What's the evidence of that?
The point of this mission overall, from the beginning, that was deeply popular, was to prevent Iran from getting nuclear capabilities, and that comes directly from the Department of War. And so, while
Jenna,
we can debate what is the ongoing,
hang on one second.
What is the ongoing
Hang on one
objective?
second. How does that square with the President of the United States a year ago, at the end of the 12-day war, announcing to the world that the Iranian nuclear program had been put back, his words, decades? It turned out it wasn't even 8 months. And then suddenly we're supposed to believe the Iranians were about to attack with a nuclear weapon within days, weeks. That's why there was this urgent sense of a need to attack. None of that makes sense. How can it go from being put back decades with this incredibly successful 12-day war, and then within 8 months, we have to launch a fully fledged war?
Well, I don't think it's a fully fledged war, but I think that intelligence, of course, can change.
What would you call it?
I think he's right to call it a conflict, and the longer that it continues,
it's a war.
The more that Americans,
but we've also been told it's been going on for 47 years.
Here,
it's a 47-year war. How many times have I heard that talking point on television?
The fact that intelligence can change is the fact that the Secretary of War said that the intelligence changed, and we have no evidence to the contrary to disbelieve that the Department of War thought that there was a national security threat. And when our government is telling us that Iran,
I'm just curious what your source is.
Have you looked at everything? Have you looked at everything that the Pentagon has seen? Were you sitting in this situation?
That Iran
don't talk over each other, because we can't actually hear either of you do that.
No, So the point, though, is that while we can debate the ongoing conflict or war, whatever you want to call it, yes, Congress hasn't specifically declared war, but you're right, Piers, of the history of the American history of this. I don't think that actually the president needs to have congressional approval at this point for it, but we can debate those ongoing issues. But the fact that this is still a matter of national security, the fact that this appropriation continues, it may, to your point, affect the midterms unless the White House can message this. But I disagree with Caroline in this respect. I don't think that President Trump actually wants to be a wartime president. He wants to be the peace president. What he actually thought he could do was to go into the Iranian government and actually negotiate this memorandum of understanding that clearly didn't happen because Iran calls the United States the Great Satan. I don't think that and that one particular point, I disagree with the administration that was ever a possibility.
So Jenna, out of interest, if the sole mission statement, and the mission statement has changed dramatically in the last few months, but let's assume for a moment's sake that Donald Trump's, when he says it was all about the nuclear capability, stopping them having a bomb. Okay. As far as I last checked, the Iranians still have every single piece of their enriched uranium. All of it. None of it's been secured. So what does victory look like to you? If they maintain the enriched uranium, they keep it. If they maintain control of the Strait of Hormuz, if the Ayatollah who was killed has been replaced by his son, who's even more hardline, if the IRGC remain in a tight grip on their country, which is why no one's been rising up to protest, if all those things are still in place when the United States pulls out of this, would you say that the conflict, whatever you want to call it, has been a spectacular failure?
All right, I'm going to stop here for a bit. Guys, a few days ago, Trump literally said, we're fighting wars. It's not possible for us to take care of Medicare, daycare, Medicaid, all these things. I mean, what the F? Who told you to start this war, huh? The American people asked you for cheaper groceries, cheaper gas, affordable health care. They didn't ask you for wars. You started a war with Iran not for the sake of the American public, but to make billions for yourself and your family and friends. Guys, the funny thing is that while he cries that he doesn't have any more money to provide Medicare, daycare, Medicaid, all that to the American public, he has got plenty of money for White House renovations, reflecting pools, his new plane renovations, and 4th of July debacles. I mean, the man is shameless to the core. And secondly, guys, I think we should consider a constitutional amendment that says the commander-in-chief has to have at least 4 years of military service. That way, they'd really get how military operations work and what it means to send our service members into conflicts abroad. If this stupid war starts to go horribly wrong, it'll be crazy to see Trump's lack of accountability. He'll do anything to make sure it wasn't his idea, and he doesn't even know that much about it. He'll also say that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, so it's a raging success, because, they were 2 weeks away from one, even though we obliterated their program in 2024. And one more thing, guys, I don't want you to forget this. Trump started the war with Iran because he wanted to divert public attention from the Epstein scandal. If you remember, before he attacked Iran, the entire world was talking about Trump's involvement with Epstein. Every reporter was questioning Trump about Epstein. His public support was in sharp decline. Even his MAGA base was questioning him all the time. So, I mean, he needed something big to escape all that. That's why he started the Iran war.
Right. And so, and I have long been an advocate of saying that the initial conflict and going in to ensure that Iran does not have nuclear capabilities is a matter of national security. And again, if we can continue to debate whether the ongoing conflict is appropriate, and I'm not sure that it is. I have been asking that same question on my daily radio program. What is the objective?
Right, but if it ends with the Iranians keeping all their enriched uranium and their regime in place, and the Ayatollah simply replaced by his more hardline son, and there are no protests, and they have control of the Strait of Hormuz, would you accept as being a terrible failure?
I would not say that would be the appropriate conclusion, which is probably why we are still engaged in this conflict to ensure that we don't leave Iran in that situation. But the entire point here of there's been an assumption on this panel going back to Netanyahu that he is actually guilty of war crimes and that he needs to face justice and accountability for what? For defending his national sovereignty?
There's one way.
Do we all not remember?
The reason I think he might be? Just a little hunch I have.
Your anti-Semitism is disgusting.
So anti-Semitism is disgusting, yeah.
Right.
But criticizing criticizing
No,
Netanyahu.
she called me an anti-Semite, by the way.
Well, criticizing Netanyahu's government.
You think I'm an anti-Semite, Piers?
No, I don't. No.
Oh, because I'm criticizing someone who's responsible for the mass slaughter of innocents.
You're
I'm an
assuming
anti-Semite. I don't know if you really want to. I don't know if you want to perpetuate that message. That's not a great message. You're literally marketing that anti-Semitism is a good thing.
You know the one way to resolve this?
No, when you argue that you're an anti-Semite for criticizing someone who's carrying out mass slaughter,
yeah, I think the whole.
I think
the whole. Honestly, Jenna, the whole shtick of accusing.
I'm not assuming. I'm just
hang on,
like you
hang
are.
on. The whole shtick, honestly, of accusing people who criticise Netanyahu's government of doing bad things. If you do, you're anti-Semitic is bullshit, and I'm kind of done with that. But what I'm also done with is that Netanyahu is still preventing any members of the foreign media, international press from going into Gaza, despite this supposed ceasefire now being in place for many months. There is no reason other, to me, than he doesn't want the world to see what they've done in Gaza. If you want to exonerate yourself from the charge of committing war crimes in Gaza, let's keep it to Gaza for now, then let the international media in to do their jobs freely, not embedded with the IDF, because there's a ceasefire, shouldn't be any risk to journalists. Let them do their job, and then we can all decide, based on their reporting, whether there's been war crimes. And the reason
that he doesn't, the reason Netanyahu
won't let it happen, the reason Netanyahu won't let people in
do you think
freely,
you'd be unbiased,
is because
Jenna?
I believe war crimes have been committed, and that is what will eventually be uncovered. We shall see. But what other reason could there possibly be for not letting the media in?
But the assumption, because they are biased, and the assumption that somehow Israel is situated differently than any other country across the world who can defend themselves. Even all of us sitting here saying America first is actually a good thing, like what Caroline Sunshine said. Well, what about Israel defending its own sovereignty? And that's why I say it is anti-Semitic to somehow suggest that Israel is the only nation.
It's very successful at subjugating the
Okay. Listen, we've run out of time. Final word to Caroline on that point.
Well, Israel has an absolute right to defend itself. But if those goals don't align with the goals of the American people and the American government, the American people are not obligated to subsidize those goals. Okay. Israel absolutely has a right to defend itself. We are not obligated because of that right to defend it. Exactly.
Okay.
Guys, at this point, Iran is winning, and they know that they don't have to negotiate anymore. They're literally toying with Trump. They know that Trump is losing support at home because of this war. They know the war is now largely unpopular inside and outside the United States. That's why they don't want to negotiate anymore. Guys, I think Trump got played by Netanyahu. He made Trump believe that the U.S. forces can defeat Iran within hours. And because of Trump's bad decisions, so far, this war has cost the American taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars and the sacrifice of our troops. Guys, I have a question. Where is Israel in this war? We give them billions of dollars in military aid every year, and they still won't help us against Iran. We literally started this war to protect Israel from Iran, and still, they won't directly enter the war. So far, all the soldiers who have died on the battlefield belong to the United States Army. Not one fallen soldier belongs to Israeli army. Back when NATO countries refused to get involved in the Iran war, Trump threatened tariffs and threatened to pull our troops from those countries to close the bases. So now, I'd love to see him even make the vaguest suggestion that he wants to cut aid if Israel won't help join this stupid war. And secondly, guys, I don't know if you know this or not, but right now Israel is kicking out American fighter planes from Ben Gurion Airport to accommodate tourist flights for Israelis. Those fighter planes are being sent to Jordanian fields and elsewhere and out of under Israelis' air defense system. So, I mean, they dragged us into this damn thing and are now abandoning and kicking us out. The way Netanyahu played with Trump is pretty eye-opening. He convinced Trump to get involved to the point his narcissism won't let him accept a loss. He knew Trump can't back out once he enters the war, and he was correct. Trump is too deep into this war to back out. And secondly, guys, at this point, I also feel that Trump doesn't care how long this war continues, because he doesn't give a damn about the American public. He doesn't care that millions of families who are living paycheck to paycheck are facing high gas and grocery prices because of the Strait of Hormuz. Before Trump started this stupid war, the price of gas in my area was around $2 a gallon, and now they've basically doubled it. So, I mean, Trump doesn't understand the pain and suffering of real people. Not at all. Not in any way. He's never shopped for groceries himself. He's never had to drive himself around. Never had to clean up his room or clean up after himself at all. He's never had to wash dishes. Never had to cook a meal for himself. He's never had to do anything that most normal people do every single day just to function at a minimum level. He's never had to do any of it, so he doesn't understand. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. I'll see you soon with another one.